welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sammy and I am a dating coach for singles. The purpose of my channel is for me to watch some of the more popular rom-coms, maybe not so popular rom-coms, and to break down the relationship dynamics between the characters so that you as the viewer hopefully can apply this information to yourself and to dismantle some of the relationship dynamics in your own life that maybe might be a little more on the toxic side. And so that you can build healthier relationships with everyone in your life. Awesome. Okay, so let's get into the disclaimers. Ooh. I don't own any of the material that I'm going to be covering. These videos are for educational purposes only. Despite the name of my channel, my intention is not to ruin rom-coms for anybody. I want you to continue to enjoy rom-coms. My hope is just that everyone can start to view them in the way that they're intended, which is from an entertainment standpoint, and to recognize that they don't necessarily mirror what healthy relationships look like in real life. Also, there is a major spoiler alert. So if you have not watched today's movie, then I highly, highly, highly recommend that you hit pause on my video right now. Go log on to your streaming services and watch today's movie first, and then come back and watch my video so that you have a better understanding of what I'm going to be talking about. But if that doesn't matter to you, if you just kind of want to forge ahead, just know that you've been warned, so do not at me when I spoil some of the major plot points to this movie. Sorry. Anyways, let's get into today's movie. So today's movie, this one came out this year. It really recently, within the last month from filming this. But it stars Kristen Stewart and Mackenzie Davis as our lovers. This is a Christmas movie as well. Kind of the Christmas from hell, if you ask me. But it's still a fun one. I think a lot of people can potentially relate to this. There's a lot of narcissistic abuse and power dynamics that come into play in this movie. But I think all in all, it's very well done. It does a really good job of kind of helping the viewer understand that things aren't so black and white, that there are a lot of gray areas, and that we do kind of gain just a lot of empathy to these characters who maybe have sustained a lot of childhood trauma from their parents. But anyways, let me get into that in a little bit. But today's movie is Happiest Season! Yay! Just figured I would keep this Christmas train rolling on through. Yeah, maybe I'll get around to maybe some Valentine's Day movies soon. But yeah, anyways, let's get into the synopsis. Again, you have been warned that spoilers are ahead. So if you haven't watched it, this is your last warning to watch it and then come back. Awesome. Okay. See you in a minute. Or less. Ooh, woof. Okay, so today's synopsis should hopefully be shorter than last week's. I feel like I gave you guys a play-by-play of Last Christmas. So I'm gonna hopefully try to keep this one really succinct and short because there are a lot of relationship dynamics to break down in this one, and it may take me a little while because there are some complexities that I really want to take my time with and be careful maneuvering. This one, I think my friend Kate put it best when she was pitching me this movie, because I hadn't heard of it, if I'm being honest. I haven't really been super into social media, and I think that's how a lot of people get their news of new things that are coming out. But my friend Kate gave me this synopsis, which I think is actually super accurate. This movie is basically the lesbian Christmas Get Out. It's pretty frightening. Basically, K-Stu's character is named Abby, and she is our main character for this movie. She is living with a, I believe, longtime girlfriend whose name is Harper, who's played by Mackenzie Davis. We learn that Abby is not the biggest fan of Christmas. Her parents both died when she was 19, and it sounds like they were super into Christmas time. So it's left Abby maybe not feeling super into the holiday spirit. I get it. I mean, grief it manifests in really unusual ways. So if you either extra love something that a loved one loved, or sometimes it has the opposite effect where because they're no longer around, it kind of ruins the spirit of things. So I totally get it. But anyways, moving on. In the heat of like a cute night out looking at Christmas lights, Harper invites Abby to go to Christmas at her family's, and this is going to be a 5-day affair. So this is kind of a long trip. And as far as we know, both girls are out and proud. And so that doesn't seem to be a moment of contention. We find out that Abby has picked out an engagement ring for Harper. So Abby is planning on asking Harper's father for permission for her hand in marriage, which is really sweet because she knows how much Harper loves Christmas time. They go off on the trip, and then before they get to town, they're both driving there. Harper decides that is the time to drop the bombshell that she's not actually out to her parents, that she didn't tell them, and that they didn't, it didn't seem like that was going to be something that they were going to take well. But she begs Abby to pretend that they are both straight and that Abby is just an orphan for Christmas time and just needs somewhere to stay for the holidays, just so that she's not alone back at their apartment, and that they're going to parade as roommates moving forward, because I guess her family has no idea that Harper is in fact gay. So it's kind of a big bomb, but Abby agrees reluctantly and says, okay, like, let's just try to make it through these 5 days. And Harper promises she'll tell her parents after Christmas. That will be better timing for her. So they get to the house. There's a lot of antics that happen within this house. Over the course of the next 5 days, we learned that Harper's dad is running for mayor, so there is a lot of pressure on all of the 3 sisters that we meet. I mean, Harper is one of those sisters. But there is a lot of pressure on this whole family to exude some kind of perfection to the outside. So I think that's where we understand why Harper is especially kind of holding in this information about who she is, because she doesn't want to hurt her parents' political career. It seems to be really, really important to the entire family. We meet Harper's mom, Tipper, who she seems like she is going to be a perfect host, but she makes a lot of passive-aggressive statements. We meet Harper's sister, Jane, who I think is the youngest sister. Jane is kind of the black sheep. She gets treated as such. But she seems very okay with marching to the beat of her own drum. But she's there to welcome them. And we meet Harper's dad, who is heavy into his mayor campaign. And that seems to be primarily most of the dialogue we see from him is about his career. So the girls have to sleep in different bedrooms. At the first dinner the first night, Harper's mom brings Harper's high school boyfriend in the hopes that they'll rekindle something. So there's a lot of awkward moments where nobody knows what's going on with these 2 women, what the nature of the relationship is, and this all seems very lighthearted from an outsider standpoint. If you didn't know what was happening, like if us as the audience didn't know that Abby and Harper were a couple, this would just be like, oh, typical Christmas, blah, blah. But there's a lot of passive aggressiveness about this, and that Harper is so far closeted while she's here in town that it creates a lot of stress on their relationship, to the point where at the final day, like Christmas, the big Christmas party where kind of the whole town shows up, we have Harper's oldest sister, Sloane, there. She has a family, she has twins, and she's married. We start to learn a lot of the secrets about some of, at least between these two girls. That Sloane learns that Harper is in fact a lesbian, and we learn that Sloane, who has a huge competitive relationship with Harper, we learned that Sloane is getting separated from her husband, and her whole kind of identity and place in this family has been that her value is being a mom. That's the kind of the political place that their dad uses with Sloane. So yeah, it creates a huge competitive relationship between Sloane and Harper, so that Sloane decides at this holiday party she is going to out Harper publicly, basically to the whole town, and put Harper on the spot, to which she denies being gay to everyone. And I think Abby is at that point where she's getting ready to leave. Her best friend has shown up to pick her up, and I think with that public denial, I think is kind of this nail in the coffin where that's got to be so hurtful. So Abby leaves, and Harper goes to try to chase after her. And it's basically like, once the party all clears out, we find Harper with her family, and her dad is irritated with the girls that they would fight like that in front of everyone and embarrass him and spread lies, because there's no way that Harper could be gay. But Harper then says, you know what? No, it's true. I am. Abby is my girlfriend, and this is who I am, and I'm tired of trying to change everything to please you guys. And Sloane then comes out with her secret that she's actually getting separated from her husband, so they're not as perfect as they seem to present. The whole family kind of does a 180. The parents realize the error of their ways, and they decide that they want to be better moving forward and be more inclusive with their daughters, and more accepting. But Harper chases after Abby and finds her at a truck stop and confesses to her that she's told her parents everything, that she really loves her and she really wants to make it work. They share a really sweet kiss, and they kind of live on happily ever after. I think we cut forward to the next Christmas the following year, and Abby's part of the family now, and she's been accepted with open arms, which is everything she wanted. We see that Harper has the engagement ring that Abby had picked out earlier in the movie. We see that the family becomes a huge proponent for gay rights, and that the dad wins the mayor's seat, and pretty much everyone gets everything that they want from here on out. Yeah, it's like a total happily ever after kind of a moment. And that's the end. So now with that done, let's go and get into these actual relationship dynamics. Okay, so that was thankfully a shorter synopsis. And I left out lots of things, but they were unimportant. Just wanted to drive us to the end of that and get into all of these juicy relationship dynamics. So I am going to actually handle these a little bit different. I am simply going to, because the main character doesn't really have these same connections to all of the characters in this story, and I think the way that these characters are approached. I'm just going to tackle each character individually and try to talk through all of the relationship dynamics or things that they show during various conversations with other characters. This feels a little bit like a spider web kind of a deal and not so much a you two and you two and you two. So hopefully this still makes sense and kind of offers a little bit of info on what's going on with these characters. So I want to start with, I think this is my favorite character in the movie. This is I believe the youngest sister, Jane. I think I could argue that she is potentially the healthiest sister of the bunch. She is maybe even one of the healthiest characters in this movie. I think there's one other character that could give her a run for her money. Jane is obviously the black sheep of this family. I think she has just been treated like an outcast her whole life, but she seems to be very happy-go-lucky, very optimistic, very sunny. She seems to be the peacekeeper with the family. She's the first one to try to hug people. She wants to make everybody happy, and that's not always a good thing. To me, that's kind of a heavy fawning response to stress, but I think in the case of how she does it, I think she just has a really big heart. I think because she has been outcasted so long, I think she doesn't want anyone else to kind of feel that way. So she is extra loving and kind to everyone that she comes across. Doesn't seem even fazed by the news with Harper, which is fantastic. Like, this is how it should be. It should be normalized. Yeah, I mean, she's just kind of the lovable weirdo. She doesn't mind telling everybody about the sci-fi novel that she's created. This whole world, she'll break down the dynamics for anybody who will listen. She's really good at communicating what it is that she wants. She's not afraid to put herself out there, which I think we see with a lot of kind of these outcast weirdos, is they have a lot of social anxiety in a sense, but it doesn't seem to affect Jane. She puts herself out there. If she wants to go on a date, if she's attracted to someone, she puts it out there. I think that's something that we all can kind of strive for. Yeah, so I think that Jane is probably the healthiest based off of what we see from her. She maybe had this troubled past where she had night terrors, she had to sleep in the basement, she was kind of isolated from everybody, but in a sense it's like that made her stronger for it because her fawn response is not as heavy-handed as Harper's is. And we see that Jane doesn't actually develop this narcissistic attitude that the rest of the family seems to have. So by being the black sheep, she's actually better for it. That she's just in a better place for it. So Jane is my pick for one of the healthiest characters. And let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I want to get into the next sister, Sloane. Sloane, there's a lot to unpack with Sloane. Sloane shows a lot of narcissistic tendencies. She has an overactive fight response to stress. We see that she kind of puts her parents up on a pedestal, especially her dad. I think that Harper and Sloane especially put their dad up on a pedestal, and they desperately try whatever they can to win his approval and his affection. Sloane was once a lawyer. She now has twins and a family, and she walked away from a successful law practice to build gift baskets, which, I mean, good for her for building a new life despite what her family thinks. That actually works for her, and but it doesn't go without judgment from her mom at every point of the way, and her dad also. They seem to hold a lot of resentment that she would walk away from the gift baskets to raise a family. she has a huge competitive relationship with Harper. They get into like an ice skating battle where like who's the fastest. Sloane has developed this like really cold exterior towards people. She's not very welcoming. She's very snippy. She doesn't seem overly engaged with meeting new people. She's very pretty short and rude with Abby upon meeting her, and doesn't really seem to care about her. I think she is looking for any ammunition to take Harper down. So when she finds out that Harper is gay, she is almost exuberant that she has some bit of dirt to take Harper down off this golden child pedestal. And she goes so far as to out her publicly, which is such toxic behavior. Never, ever, ever tell somebody's secret, especially about their identity. That is not your place to make those decisions on their behalf. So this is pretty reprehensible behavior, that she thinks that that is okay in order to get ahead, that she would wound her sister that much. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty terrible to take away Harper's story from her. So there is this heavy narcissistic streak in her, which I think is obviously passed down based off of the narcissistic abuse that these girls have been enduring their whole life. So it would make sense that at least one or more of the kids would also inherit these defense mechanisms. There is this common thing in, sorry, I'm itchy. There is this thing in narcissistic family dynamics where there is this huge emphasis to create this image of perfection, flawlessness from the outside perspective. So we don't know that there are any cracks within Sloane's family dynamic with her husband until we catch her husband actually like in the act of cheating on her publicly, and she's not fazed because she's actually been legally separated from him for a moment. She's more so embarrassed that someone had found out rather than being embarrassed at the fact that they are separating, which, you know, that's truly, it's not anything to be embarrassed about, but I think that he's cheating on her, I think, is the thing to be more embarrassed about rather than that somebody found out about it. Yeah, so it's the priorities are a little out of whack because she's been raised to kind of create this pristine veneer that by the end we see her soften. So I think throughout the whole movie she's an extremely toxic character, but by the end we see this switch flip on where I cannot remember if she actually apologizes for what she did, but we see the vulnerability where she lets her secret out, and that her and Harper decide that they are not going to live under their like parents' thumb anymore. I think that's really freeing, and we do see by like the following year that there is more of a softness and more of an engaged kind of demeanor. Like she's more engaged with what's happening with the family, and she seems more loving towards her sister and her sister's girlfriend. That, yeah, we see a really positive shift in her. I don't know how realistic that is. People don't just change on a dime. Real change does take time. So my hope is that, you know, within a year she was able to make that switch for herself and be better. But I can't say for sure. I can't say that, yeah, if they figured it out and that she actually had made that change. But my hope is that she did, because I think by the end, the very, very end, we do see a really healthy shift in her. So by the end, she is healthy. But during the majority of the movie, a lot of her actions can be seen as highly selfish, self-serving moves. She tries to gain information to use against other people in a way to propel herself forward. And yeah, just a lot of narcissistic behaviors that I'm hoping she shifted. But yes, obviously put on by just the environment that she's grown up in, that this has been fostered in her. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into their dad. So this is a little bit of a sneaky one, but I think that all of this narcissistic abuse actually stems from their dad. And I think his name's Bob. God, I'm so bad at like learning these characters' names. But yes, so their dad, you know, he's running for mayor. He really kind of to the audience, it kind of is performative interest in other people, but really, I think he only shows interest in people that can, again, like Sloane, can propel him forward. He doesn't really show much interest in what's going on with Jane. The only interaction we see with him and her is when he's using her to fix like some of the office problems, which, you know, she seems really happy to do those things, but he doesn't seem to be engaged in her life, and he doesn't really bring her around any of the political partners or people who can help his career, because I think he's worried about this image that she would project, that, you know, she's not maybe the best at social encounters. She's not the greatest at reading encounters, which, you know, is not a bad thing. I think some people just inherently have that skill. But I think he only presents the daughter at the time who can propel him forward and make him look really good. And at the moment, through the majority of the movie, it's Harper. Harper is his golden child. She works at a paper, and I think she does like political reporting. So to him, he's like, oh, this has to look real sexy to these political people who work to do kind of the PR. And I think he's trying to get somebody on as kind of an election manager. Yeah, he uses Harper to kind of be that like smart, you know, this is, you know, the chip off the old block. This is my daughter who will probably be my political legacy. The way he treats Sloane is like, I think at some point she had been his golden child when she was a lawyer and following in his footsteps. And I think the moment that she walked away from that, I think she just kind of got shunned. Really, the only reason he ever brings her to meet people is to showcase her family, to showcase these beautiful twins that she has. Yeah, I mean, even with his wife, I mean, we don't see a whole lot of physical affection between the two. We don't really see a lot of like complimenting, but his wife, her whole life revolves around his like political career. So yeah, I think a lot of this narcissistic power control dynamic begins with him, and it just starts to trickle down, and it's this patriarchal effect where these women are basically like little trophies and little dolls, and that, yeah, their whole lives have to provide value to him. And so, yeah, I would say he's deceptively toxic because he comes off very nice and charming, but really he's only interested in people if they kind of have his interests, if they can provide value to him, if they can move him forward. So yeah, sneakily, I think he's actually extremely narcissistic and extremely toxic. So much so that like when he at the end is yelling at the girls that they should be ashamed of themselves for putting on this huge fight, and he's like, you didn't even act like this as children, and you're fighting in front of everyone, and you're ruining my career. You are ruining my career. Never stops to even understand if like where all of this is coming from, but he's like, Sloane, you're spreading lies. You are better than this, or you used to be. And it's calling back and wounding her for leaving this law career and shaming her. And then to shame Harper in the same sentence that there's no possible way that she could be gay. But yeah, I mean, it takes Tipper walking in and convincing him that, you know, we've done this to our daughters. We've driven them to this where they hate each other, and that they're hurting each other for us. And he apologizes and has his whole 180, and I guess he's like the perfect father from there on out. But I don't think it undoes the abuse that these girls have sustained their whole life. So I cannot say that he's even healthy, because I just truly cannot believe that a narcissist could ever admit that they were wrong, especially just like that. So I find the ending to be highly unbelievable. I don't think that he would just switch like that. I think that what would happen is that he would continue to deny that Harper's even gay and be disappointed in Sloane, and that would be it, and just hole himself away. Yeah, and I think to further prove the point of being a narcissist is that most of the movie we just talk about his political career, and we see him having these scenes away where he's sitting in his office just reveling in his past political speeches and like how great he was, and like reliving those moments and you know, acting them out again. So he's just very, very full of himself. Yeah, huge narcissist. So I think he's a highly, highly toxic character, and it is so subversive that I think you have to really pay attention to the actions, that just because he's not outright mean to anyone or bullying, that we can tell, doesn't mean that he's actually not a toxic person. And yeah, that he's been perpetuating a lot of this toxic emotional abuse towards these girls in the family. Yeah, okay, so I think that's good on their dad. Next, I want to go through Tipper, their mom. So Tipper is the matriarch of the family. She kind of has this enforcer role. Yeah, like she's like the bad cop for the family. She's blunt. She's also a narcissist, but I think she's also sustaining a lot of narcissistic abuse from her husband, that she's not able to do the things that she truly loves for fear of it not coming off as feminine enough and being potentially not good for her husband's political career. Yeah, she like reinforces a lot of these old patriarchal dynamics within the family. She makes a lot of homophobic, passive-aggressive statements. There's a lot of misogyny that drips through a lot of her statements, where it's like only men can have like power positions, or I think she really represents this old school thought process in these women who kind of are the backbone for the family, but she's really protecting her husband and his ideals because it protects her way of life. So it's like kind of feeding your daughters to this beast because it offers her security and protection to live this way. And I think it's the way that she was raised to live in these toxic dynamics that typically only help the men, but it also helps these wives in a sense. It's like a trickle-down effect, when really it could just be, oh, let's just be equal, and then let's teach our kids to be equals. And yeah, it's like she reinforces this idea that the daughters only provide value to them, which I think creates a lot of toxic thoughts in these girls, and I feel so sorry for them that they grew up with two narcissistic parents. I mean, it's just awful. Yeah, she pushes a lot what she thinks is best, thinks what she thinks is best. like Harper's unmarried, so obviously she needs to be set up, and who better to set her up with than her first boyfriend, who I think is a doll and cute and blah blah blah, and it's what her mother thinks is best, and she never stops to listen to what her daughters want. So again, this is this toxic parental, like, I'm your parent, I know best. Even though you're a 30-year-old woman who has been living alone, I still know better than you. When, you know, we know ourselves better than anyone. Yeah, I think that I kind of look at Tipper as this, like, she's the white blood cell who attacks any of like foreign antibodies in the system. So Abby is like this foreign particle that just found herself in this ecosystem, and Tipper is just like attack. She's very rude to Abby. She doesn't really do a lot to make sure that Abby's welcome. There's a lot of double talk with her where like she'll reassure Abby and be like, oh, you'll be in the basement, blah blah blah, you'll sleep in there, there's no lock on the door, so you might not have privacy, but don't worry, no one will ever barge in on you. The next, you know, I think 2 days later, she's trying to barge in and is like, why is there something in front of the door? Why would you ever want privacy in this house? So she's very unaware of what other people's needs are, and is very interested in her own needs and her own gain. Again, another heavy narcissist where she's not concentrated on other people's feelings. Because we do see her apologize in this movie. But yeah, I mean, she's very like insincere when we hear her apologize. And the way that she brings up Abby's parents who have passed away is very rude. Like straight up, she'll bring them up a lot and be like, oh, because you're an orphan. Like, what did they do at the orphanage? Even though multiple times Abby has told her that she wasn't in an orphanage, but she was 19 when her parents passed away. It's still, for somebody who's so concentrated on good manners, she really has no qualms being this outright rude. And I think it's because it's just Abby that's there. If there were lots of people around, she wouldn't be making these statements like that, because somebody could physically call her out on that behavior. And narcissists can't be wrong, and they're the victims, and you are always the person who's perpetrating. You brought it out of them. It's not their fault that your feelings got hurt. So she again has this big, like, oh, our daughters are hurt, it's because of us, she has to come to the dad to turn him around. But again, I just don't find that to be a believable response, that they would just change because of one fight unless it served them. And so in some way, I think, like, to Tipper's mind, it has to be something that they can capitalize on. And I like, she seems like the type of person who would capitalize on the gay rights movement and jump on board with Pride and see it as a way to get to their political goals and to gain, like, so they can gain a lot from this. So to me, I think of it as being a very calculated move, because it doesn't compute that she would just snap and go, oh, we were wrong, let's be better, I want to take karate. Like, I just don't see that being realistic. And I know this is the part of the movie that just feels like they have to tie it in a nice bow and end it in the end. But real life is messier than that, and it just wouldn't switch so quickly. So I think for the sake of everybody, I hope that those are genuine, real changes and not something that they're capitalizing on, but I can't say for sure. So yes, I think that the mom is highly toxic, and I don't believe her big switch at the end that's supposed to make her really healthy. Sorry. Okay, so let's go into Harper's first girlfriend, Riley. So Riley is another really, really healthy character, despite having this tragic backstory. I mean, it's truly surprising that, yeah, like truly surprising that Riley, despite her backstory with Harper, where her and Harper dated in high school, it was a secret from everybody. I think it was during a time where it maybe wasn't so easy to be gay still. I mean, I'm imagining that they discovered that they were gay probably in the 2000s, which is about probably when I was in high school. So I can imagine that then it still was kind of, especially in the town that they're at where people are still weird about people being gay, I can imagine that being really hard. Yeah, to just not be accepted and to be isolated and yeah, humiliated, bullied for something that's really not anyone else's business besides the person that you're with. But basically, kind of their backstory is that they were inseparable in high school when they were dating. Harper's friends were all these girls who she's still friends with. These girls found the love letters that they used to pass to each other in their lockers, and Harper covers for herself and basically says, oh no, Riley's just obsessed with me. She's a lesbian. I'm not, and I don't know how to get her to go away. So then it takes all of the attention off her onto poor Riley, who gets blindsided and then just ostracized from her school for her sexual preference and outed by the person who's supposed to love her and care about her. So that would be extremely traumatizing and damaging. I mean, good for her for really turning it around and not letting something like that destroy her. But I think she's become a medical doctor. She's just seems to be doing really, really well for herself. But yeah, so basically in this movie, she befriends Abby, who is Harper's current girlfriend, of course, and they become pretty close where they have a lot of solace in each other. There's no like any hint that there's potentially them crossing a boundary, that Abby would cheat on Harper for Riley. But I mean, Riley seems to, you know, be there to help Abby through this process. And I think it may be a way for her to heal what happened to her, watching it happen to another girl, that Harper's doing the same thing, and to be there for her and help her through it and be kind of this guiding light when she didn't have that same luxury in the past. So I think that she's just this really good-hearted person who, she's not seeking Abby out necessarily, but when Abby calls her, she's there. And so I think she's a really, really good friend who kind of is able to let Abby vent to her and ask advice and try to understand Harper better. And it doesn't seem like she's trying to use Abby for any kind of revenge against Harper or anything like that. She just seems to be really a genuine person who just wants both of them to be happy. So she is a very healthy character in my book. The only thing that I can foresee being an issue, which is, this is not Riley's fault at all, but that Abby, and I'll probably go into this during Abby's thing too, but that Abby hid this from Harper. She didn't just come right out and say, oh, I'm hanging out with Riley. She kind of withholds that information. I mean, she's never asked fully before being interrupted or of what's going on between her and Riley, but she's just not forthright with that information, so that makes it a little blurry. But I don't think that they're doing anything that would constitute a boundary push, but I can see how it would be a little like uncomfy for Harper to see her girlfriend with her first girlfriend, especially knowing what she did to that girlfriend. But yeah, I think it's just, you know, giving a heads up would be nice. Yeah. So on my scale, yeah, I think Riley's super just healthy all around. So yay, Riley. And honestly, like, just as a side note, I kind of wish that Abby and Riley ended up together because they seem like a way healthier coupling, that they have really good communication skills, they can be vulnerable with each other, that they just seem to have a lot of care and respect. They're both out in the open and have just genuinely like each other and have a good time together. And I think that they hint at the very, very first meeting that there is like an attraction between the two, but that never gets explored. So we'll never know. But I think they would have actually been a healthier couple than Harper and Abby. Sorry. Oh, okay. So now I want to go into Abby's best friend, John. Another super healthy character. I love John. He is so great. He's just rad. He seems to be kind of the voice of reason during this movie. He not only watches all of the animals for his best friend, who, you know, is potentially going to get engaged. And yes, of course, he has his own ideals about marriage and that he's just, you know, not interested in it. But, you know, he's not going to fully rain on Abby's parade that this is something that she wants to have with her girlfriend. He watches all of the animals for her. Let's not talk about the fish. Rip. But, you know, at some point he does want to be upfront and tell her what happened with those fish. And he seems to genuinely like take really good care of the rest of the animals. I think in the beginning he kind of shows to be not healthy when he's not really listening to her. But I think he fully redeems himself, that when Abby needs someone, he is there. He is there on the phone with her. I think he has a few moments where he oversteps a boundary and tries to tell her what to do, but he quickly corrects that behavior and apologizes and says, let me just be there for you. Like, you are my friend. I care for you. I want you to be happy. How can I be there for you? And then when she can't get a ride out of there, he shows up for her. He drives however long it takes to get there, because this was going to be a $1,000 Uber or Lyft ride out of this town back to her apartment. He shows up and is there to get her out of there, despite, you know, having to be there during a big party. So it's funny, he kind of verges on being in coaching territory a few times, where he, you know, just wants to look out for her and take care of her and make sure she is okay and that she is acting in a manner that works best for her. Okay, so we went over John a moment ago, and he's, again, my favorite character, probably. One of my favorite characters. There's a couple. There's at least three. But yes, one of the healthiest. And so, yeah, I'm going to tackle my last two, which are Harper and Abby. And let's start with Harper. So obviously, Harper has sustained a lot of narcissistic abuse through her childhood and into her adulthood. She has a very competitive relationship to her older sister, to the point where there's like no love lost between the two, where they are pretty ruthless in their competition, that they would be willing to, Sloane is willing to out Harper, and Harper is willing to, but doesn't, out Sloane's secret of being separated from her husband. I would say that Harper is probably the healthier one in that relationship with Sloane, because she doesn't out her sister's secret, and really it seems that she only makes the notion that she would do that in response to Sloane outing her. But she, again, doesn't do it, and I think she gets very much into her own experience of the shock of being outed, which I absolutely, yes, that was a horrific experience to be outed to the town. I think breaking down the relationship with her and Abby, Harper is definitely the more toxic one of the two. And part of that could be that we, the viewer, are following Abby as our champion through this movie. So we see it from pretty much Abby's point of view, but also a very neutral point of view. So I will say, based off the information, Harper is definitely the more toxic. And I understand, for good reason. It is from her childhood. So I'll start with a couple of examples of why I actually don't think that this relationship is going to work unless Harper and Abby, but mostly Harper, goes and gets serious clinical help for what is going on with her. But she does exhibit a lot of narcissistic tendencies, so the chances of her getting help for these things is pretty slim, because narcissists cannot even fathom that they are the issue. Yeah, in real life, I don't think a lot of these characters would get the help that they need to receive. And also, I don't think that they would flip on a dime and naturally or magically just be fantastic people. But yes, okay, so Harper starts this off with a pretty big lie. She invites Abby to come to her parents for a lovely Christmas and 5 days worth of fun. Basically lies, and has previously told Abby that she is out with her parents and her whole family, and that is not true. She waits until they are almost to her parents' house to give Abby that information, which really leaves Abby in an unfair position where she can say, no, I don't want to go, and then it's basically a wasted trip to get as far as they have, or to continue going on and hope that it's going to be okay, and is basically forced back into the closet by Harper. Harper goes back into the closet again as well. They start off not being able to freely express their feelings for each other in front of Harper's family. So I think that, number one, that lie, and then the manipulation tactic to kind of keep Abby in an uncomfortable and unfair position to basically concede and do what Harper wants, which is to go with her to her family Christmas and tough it out with her, and hopefully be there to support her as she does come out to her parents after Christmas, is kind of the plan. So that's toxic behavior number one. I would say the second time that we see some toxicity is kind of the selfish behavior that Harper exhibits throughout the next couple of days, where she has basically like a disregard for Abby's feelings. Abby is definitely the outsider in this situation, and it doesn't really feel like Harper's family is that welcoming to Abby as well. Harper really could have done a way better job of sticking up for Abby, or including her more, or making sure that they were around each other in some way, just to help or make some introductions or something like that, because these parties get really uncomfortable that Abby basically gets ditched constantly. And then there is a moment where Abby kind of gets accused of shoplifting. Harper doesn't stand up for Abby, just basically leads her to being okay with certain situations. And what I mean by that is she has these weird ways of asking questions, like asking permission type things, but she's leading the witness to give the response that she wants from them. So yeah, like at the dinner, she kind of leads Abby to be like, well, you can't come to dinner, obviously, based off what's happening. I believe you. I believe that you would never do something like this, but it's just my parents. Are you going to be okay fending for yourself? I mean, it leaves little choices for Abby at this point, because even if Abby says no, it's kind of what the outcome is. And really, it seems that Harper has been conditioned to prioritize her parents' needs above everybody else's, including her own. And so the only thing that snaps her out of that mode is when Abby's leaving. When Abby says, that's it, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. That's when Harper's like, okay, I didn't do a good job of prioritizing you, and now I'm going to prioritize you, which is not good. It's just really not good. I think you have to create some kind of a balance and maintain some kind of a balance with your feelings, with your family, with your partner. I mean, it's a lot. It is hard being human. But that is part of the game, and sometimes you have to choose a side, and Harper seems to continuously choose her parents' side no matter what. This is a huge fawning response. So her response to stress is people pleasing. She people pleases her way out of everything. She people pleases the people who are perceived as in power. So people who have the power over certain situations, Harper will people please them, and that is to avoid pain. Girl, I sympathize with you. I was a heavy fawner, and I have to fight it constantly. So that is also a toxic behavior, because she's not able to prioritize the needs of her loved one and the person that she is kind of taking into her care, in a sense, in this hostile environment. And then finally, I think the last kind of little toxic thing, I know this was a long one, that Harper does is with Abby. So after the dinner that Abby is not invited to, Harper invites her out to a bar with her friends, who I believe are the ones that these seem to be the friends that outed Riley and bullied her relentlessly, and her ex-boyfriend is there. So, yeah, I feel for Abby in this situation where Harper puts her there, and then again doesn't really do a lot to make her feel included and integrated into this group. She didn't really go out of her way to make Abby feel included, and so Abby leaves. We see Harper kind of have like a mild flirtation with her high school boyfriend, but she's obviously not interested in him in that way. I think they share like a nice exchange, but she again lies to him, which, of course, she's just not ready to come out to him, and I understand why. We have the scene after the next day. We see that night Abby texting Harper all night saying, I love you, please let me know you made it home safe. No responses. Did she get left on red? I don't remember. But again, no responses. There's no let me think of Abby's needs too. And yeah, she just goes to bed. And so the next day, Abby gets up and goes to her room to check on her and make sure she made it home okay, all that stuff. And she seems to just be genuinely worried about Harper, and Harper does this thing that is very characteristic of narcissists, that she doesn't, and I'll give her credit, she's probably very hungover in this moment, but she cannot take responsibility for the hurt that she is causing to Abby. And I think that the way that she processes guilt is that she lashes out. So instead of talking to Abby and, I think Abby's coming to her with like open communication, safety, just a lot of care and concern, Harper lashes out. And she basically tells her, I need space. You are smothering me. Which Abby, as we've seen, has given her everything that she's wanted, given her all of the space in the world. Really hasn't been that smothering. So I think it's just the way that she manifests that guilt. And as we know, narcissists cannot be wrong, and they cannot, they have to be the victim in every circumstance. So I think for these reasons, to me, this just can't be isolated. And I'm sure that this narcissistic tendency comes out in other ways when it's just the two of them. I mean, by the end, we see that there's just like a magic wand, everything's good, everything's happy. Yeah, I mean, she publicly denies being with Abby, and that has to be very wounding for the person that you're with, that you can't that you can't be with them and be proud of that. And I can only imagine just, what that feels like. And for somebody to repress who they are for your comfort, I mean, yuck. So I think this is a really highly toxic relationship just from the things that we see in it. And I just cannot imagine this working. Harper just has to seriously get a lot of clinical help to work through these kind of learned belief systems from childhood to now. And that just doesn't change overnight. Even if you want it to change, it really takes a lot of time and effort to build awareness and to work through triggers, all of that. So I don't think the ending is believable. Sorry. Okay, so now, gosh, that was a really, really long one. So thank you for sticking with me. Last one I'll go over is Abby. So Abby, for the most part, we know is, I would say she's generally a very healthy, loving lover. She is a good partner. She is supporting her partner through the majority of this movie. I mean, she is very compromising to a fault. So I would say that there is a slightly toxic behavior in this, in that she too fawns. She is also people-pleasing heavily in this movie. And I think that is her way of coping and getting through this nightmare of 5 days. And she too wants to make a really good impression on this family because she wants to get engaged to their sister. I think it's to a point where I think if she would have kind of set her foot down earlier and said, hey, I'm not going to be okay with that. Maybe at the very beginning when they're almost there, and say, I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of us hiding ourselves. So either we need to go in and, I'll let you have that conversation with your parents, but I can't go if, I have to hide our relationship the whole time. Or, if that conversation can't be had at the beginning, I think after they have to sleep in separate rooms, and the way that the parents ambushed them and brought Harper's ex-boyfriend to dinner, I think after that stuff, there should have been a firm conversation that this situation is not going to work, because it's causing Abby enough pain where she has to call her friend to vent about it. So I think instead of doing that, I think there should have been the conversation with her partner, and having that open communication is what makes relationships healthier. Abby is a pretty healthy person, but I think from what we've seen, she is a fawner and she will give people what they want. Maybe isn't necessarily the best at setting boundaries or communicating her feelings until she's hit that 10 where she's done. So you've got two people pleasers trying to make it work. One's a narcissist, the other is, she's the opposite, which typically is the empath kind of personality, which I'm not sure if she's empathic per se, but I mean that tends to be the opposite of the narcissist, is the giver, the person who will give. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you for your support. If you liked this video, I have a couple others if you'd like to watch. Also, if you could hit that like button. If you found any useful information in this that you'd like to share, please feel free. And please share with a friend, a family member, anyone that you would like to see in healthier relationships all around. If you agree or disagree with anything that I had to say, please leave me a comment. I would love to have a conversation about it. And if you could hit the subscribe and the bell to get any notifications of when I post next. I notoriously have technical difficulties. I am a walking Murphy's Law. So, yeah, hit the subscribe and the bell to be notified when my videos drop so that you can always be in the loop. And I think that's it. Take care of yourselves and have a safe new year. I hope that this next year is healthier and happier for everyone all around. Keep your loved ones close, take extra good care of yourself, and drink lots of water. That is all for me, and I will see you next time.